The correct magnetic course was not the compass course. There was another sly little devil lying in wait to trip me up and land me smashing on the roofs of Vatu Leile. This little devil went by the name of Deviation. I read: "The compass course is the course to steer, and is derived from the correct magnetic course by applying to it the deviation." Now, deviation is the variation in the needle caused by the distribution of iron on board of ship. This purely local variation I derived from the deviation card of my standard compass, and then applied to the correct magnetic course. The result was the compass course. And yet, not yet. My standard compass was amidships on the companionway. My steering compass was aft, in the cockpit, near the wheel. When the steering compass pointed west by south, 3/4 south, the steering course, the standard compass pointed west 1/2 north, which was certainly not the steering course. I kept the Snark up till she was heading west by south 3/4 south on the standard compass, which gave, on the steering compass, southwest by west. The foregoing operations constitute the simple little matter of setting a course. And the worst of it is that one must perform every step correctly, or else he will hear "breakers ahead" some pleasant night, a nice sea bath, and be given the delightful diversion of fighting his way to the shore through a horde of man-eating sharks. Just as the compass is tricky and strives to fool the mariner by pointing in all directions except north, so does that guide-post of the sky, the sun, persist in not being where it ought to be at a given time. This carelessness of the sun is the cause of more trouble; at least it caused trouble for me. To find out where one is on the earth's surface, he must know at precisely the same time where the sun is in the heavens. That is to say, the sun, which is the timekeeper for men, doesn't run on time. When I discovered this, I fell into deep gloom, and all the cosmos was filled with doubt. Immutable laws, such as gravitation and the conservation of energy, became wobbly, and I was prepared to witness their violation at any moment and to remain unastonished. For, see, if the compass lied, and the sun did not keep its engagements, why should not objects lose their mutual attraction, and why should not a few bushel baskets of force be annihilated? Even perpetual motion became possible, and I was in a frame of mind prone to purchase Keeley Motor stock from the first enterprising agent that landed on the Snark's deck. And when I discovered that the earth really rotated on its axis 366 times a year, while there were only 365 sunrises and sunsets, I was ready to doubt my own identity. This is the way of the sun. It is so irregular that it's impossible for man to devise a clock that will keep the sun's time. The sun accelerates and retards as no clock could be made to accelerate and retard. The sun is sometimes ahead of its schedule, at other times it is lagging behind, and at still other times it is breaking the speed limit in order to overtake itself, or, rather, to catch up with where it ought to be in the sky. In this last case it does not slow down quick enough, and, as a result, goes dashing ahead of where it ought to be. In fact, only 4 days in a year do the sun and the place where the sun ought to be happen to coincide. The remaining 361 days the sun is pothering around all over the shop. Man, being more perfect than the sun, makes a clock that keeps regular time. Also, he calculates how far the sun is ahead of its schedule or behind. The difference between the sun's position and the position where the sun ought to be, if it were a decent, self-respecting sun, man calls the equation of time. Thus the navigator endeavoring to find his ship's position on the sea looks in his chronometer to see where precisely the sun ought to be according to the Greenwich custodian of the sun. Then to that location he applies the equation of time, and finds out where the sun ought to be and isn't. This latter location, along with several other locations, enables him to find out what the man from Kansas demanded to know some years ago. The Snark sailed from Fiji on Saturday, June 6th, and the next day, Sunday, on the wide ocean, out of sight and land, I proceeded to endeavor to find out my position by a chronometer sight for longitude and by a meridian observation for latitude. The chronometer sight was taken in the morning when the sun was some 21 degrees above the horizon. I looked in the nautical almanac and found that on that very day, June 7th, the sun was behind time 1 minute and 26 seconds, and that it was catching up at a rate of 14.67 seconds per hour. The chronometer said that at the precise moment of taking the sun's altitude, it was 25 minutes after 8 o'clock at Greenwich. From this date it would seem a schoolboy's task to correct the equation of time. Unfortunately, I was not a schoolboy. Obviously, at the middle of the day, at Greenwich, the sun was 1 minute and 26 seconds behind time. Equally obviously, if it were 11 o'clock in the morning, the sun would be 1 minute and 26 seconds behind time, plus 14.67 seconds. If it were 10 o'clock in the morning, twice 14.67 seconds would have to be added. And if it were 8:25 in the morning, then 3.5 times 14.67 seconds would have to be added. Quite clearly then, if instead of being 8:25 a.m. it were 8:25 p.m., then 8.5 times 14.67 seconds would have to be not added, but subtracted. For if at noon the sun were 1 minute and 26 seconds behind time, and if it were catching up with where it ought to be at the rate of 14.67 seconds per hour, then at 8:25 p.m. it would be much nearer where it ought to be than it had been at noon. So far, so good. But was that 8:25 of the chronometer a.m. or p.m.? I looked at the Snark's clock. It marked 8:09, and it was certainly a.m., for I had just finished breakfast. Therefore, if it was 8 in the morning on board the Snark, the 8 o'clock of the chronometer, which was the time of the day at Greenwich, must be a different 8 o'clock from the Snark's 8 o'clock. But what 8 o'clock was it? It can't be the 8 o'clock of this morning, I reasoned. Therefore it must be either 8 o'clock this evening or 8 o'clock last night. It was at this juncture that I fell into the bottomless pit of intellectual chaos. We are in east longitude, I reasoned, therefore we are ahead of Greenwich. If we are behind Greenwich, then today is yesterday. If we are ahead of Greenwich, then yesterday is today. But if yesterday is today, what under the sun is today? Tomorrow? Absurd! Yet it must be correct. When I took the sun this morning at 8:25, the sun's custodians at Greenwich were just arising from dinner last night. Then correct the equation of time for yesterday, says my logical mind. But today is today, my literal mind insists. I must correct the sun for today and not for yesterday. Yet today is yesterday, urges my logical mind. That's all very well, my literal mind continues. If I were in Greenwich, I might be in yesterday. Strange things happen in Greenwich. But I know as sure as I am living that I am here, now, in today, June 7th, and that I took the sun here, now, today, June 7th. Therefore I must correct the sun here, now, today, June 7th. Bosh! Snaps my logical mind. Lecky says. Never mind what Lecky says, interrupts my literal mind. Let me tell you what the nautical almanac says. The nautical almanac says that today, June 7th, the sun was 1 minute and 26 seconds behind time and catching up at the rate of 14.67 seconds per hour. It says that yesterday, June 6th, the sun was 1 minute and 36 seconds behind time and catching up at the rate of 15